talk about legend. What is legend? Legend is a popular story handed down earlier times whose truth is not ascertained. Legend is a popular story handed down from earlier times whose truth is not ascertained. Legend are what? Stories handed down earlier times, long ago. We don't know how true those stories are. That is what we call legend. We don't know how true the story are. We call it what? Legend. We can't ascertain that this story is true. This story happened. This story occurred. We don't know. So legend are what? Is a popular story that is being passed from generation. A story handed from generation to generation among a people and believed its historical basis. People just believe this is how it is. This is how it happened. They just make people to believe. So legend what? Has a little reflection of truth in it, not like myth. Remember, myths are untrue stories. But those stories are just what? They are made to answer questions about nature. But now legend is what? These are stories that people cannot ascertain how true the story are. A legend is a traditional tale told about a specific person or place. The story could be about a specific person, an hero, or a place, how a place came to be. A legend is a story that consists of mixture of fantasy and real stories. Remember I told you it has some reflection of truth in it. So this legend has mixtures of a fantasy, things that are not real, just to exaggerate and make things real. And this story also has some real elements in it, some truth in it. They are like myths, but the difference, there is always something true in legend. Legend is just like myths, but the difference between legend and myths is myths are untrue stories, while legend has some true elements in it. Nowadays, history is written in books. Historians who write books do so only after they have studied old documents and old objects that remain with us. So that's about what the historian. But in the past, before people could write, the only history was that other people remembered and repeated stories and poems. Stories were being passed from generation to generation back then. But nowadays we have what? History books about the past. But in the olden days we have what? Stories being told with the word of the mouth, passed from generation to generation. When people repeat a story over many hundred of years, it gradually changes. Either they omit something in the story or they add something in it. So that's how we said the stories are not true. The legend is not what? Fully true. Because when people are passing story from generation to generation, there is always an omission or addition. Either a person is omitted in the story or a place is being omitted. A thing must be omitted in that story. Because you can't say it out as it happened. So when you want to pass it to another generation, there's also an omission in it again. So that's what brings us, when people repeat a story over many hundreds of years, it gradually changes. The form changes. Leaders become kings, queens, princes and princesses. Name of people and places may be altered, like I said. When telling someone a story, you can't really say it the way it happened. Either there's addition or omission to that story. The name of a person could be altered or a place could be altered. Two similar events may become one. Gradually a legend is made. But despite these changes, a legend still reflects something that really happened. Remember I told you, legend still has some real fact in it, unlike myth. Myth does not have any element of truth. But legends still have a little reflection of element of truth in it. So, legends were the first history book. Legends are not true in the way that modern history books are true, but they show how our ancestors thought about their ancestor, and so they lead us into past time which history books cannot reach. When we read or hear a legend, we cannot say that is exactly what happened, but we can say something like that happened. So, like I said in this first one, legend is popular story added up from earlier times whose truth cannot be ascertained. You can't really say this is what happened, but you say something like this happened. That is when we have legend. So, I'm going to read a legend to you. Where is Onyeoma now? Many years ago, people say there was a town in the brass country called Onyeoma. For a long time, the people of Onyeoma traded peacefully with their neighbors, the Kulas. One day, a prince of Kulas went to Onyeoma to trade and fell in love with her. She returned his love and agreed to marry him. After this, the prince often visited Onyeoma to see her. Naturally, he wanted to meet the king, her father, but when he asked the princess to take him to her father's place, she always refused. The prince always sent a messenger to tell the princess when he's coming to Onyeoma, but one day the messenger fell ill and his message did not reach the princess. When the prince arrived, she was not at home. So he decided to go alone to call on the king. When the prince reached the palace, he greeted the king and then said, "I am the prince of Kula and I want to marry your daughter, princess." Before he could finish speaking, the king seized a sword and killed him. When the princess returned home, she saw some bundles of Kula's clothes on the floor. So she said, "Has the prince of Kula come? Where is he?" Her servants knew the king had killed the prince, but they were afraid to tell her. "He has gone for a long walk," they said. The princess did not believe them. She ran to the palace, and when she saw the prince dead, when she saw the prince's body, she wept and cursed her father. Then she set off at once for Kula. When she arrived there, went to the king of the Kulas and said, "I am the princess of Onyeoma. Your son asked me to marry him, and I agreed. But I refused to take him to my father. I was afraid my father would kill him. Today he came to visit me, but I was away fishing. So he went alone to my father's palace, and my father killed him. I have come to ask you to take your army to Onyeoma and kill my father." The king of the Kulas was mad with grief and rage. He and his army went at once to Onyeoma and killed the king and all the people of Onyeoma and completely destroyed their city. And that is why today nobody knows the city of Onyeoma used to be. Nobody knows the city where Onyeoma used to be. So that is a legend story. We can't ascertain how true that story is, but most people believe. Most people do not know where the city Onyeoma is. So this story is having what? Is a story passed earlier times from generation to generation, and we have this. We have the element of truth and hate. Now this is another story. Benin, the founding of the Second Kingdom. The people of Benin were not pleased with their rulers, so they sent a delegation to Ife. When the delegation saw Oduduwa, the king of Ife, the leader said, "We are disappointed with our rulers. Please send us a prince of Ife to rule over us." Oduduwa did not answer at once. Instead, he asked the servants to to bring 7 lies. He gave the lies to Benin and said, "Take these lies back to Benin with you and look after them well. Bring them back to me in 3 years' time, then I will give you my answer." The Beninese looked after the lies very well. Indeed, the lies grew bigger and fatter every year. When the lies were taken back to Ife, Oduduwa said, "People who take such good care of tiny creatures like lies will certainly take good care of my son." So he sent his son, Prince Oromiyan, to Benin together with some councillors. Soon after his arrival in Benin, Oromiyan married Erinwinde, the beautiful daughter Enioga of Ego, who bore him a son. But it was not easy for a foreigner to govern the Beninese, and after a few years, Oromiyan called a meeting of the people. "I am going back to Ife," he said, "because I cannot rule you properly. Only a man born and brought up here can do that. So I am leaving my son here. He will be your king. I shall leave some of my Ife councillors here to help your elders advise him." When Prince Oromiyan left Benin, he did not hurry back to Ife. Instead, he traveled to other towns, including Oba and Oyo, where he spent some time. And when he finally returned to Ife and became Oni, he left one of his sons behind in Oyo, who was the first Alaafin. So Oromiyan was the father of both Iweka, the Oba of Benin, and the first Alaafin of Oyo. That is the legend. Remember, I told you a legend is what? It could be a story of a place or people. So now this is the story of what? A place, Benin. How the rulership came into existence. How Oromiyan ruled Benin. This is a story. We can't ascertain how true it is, but people believe it's based on historical belief. They believe it based on their history basis. They believe this is what happened in history. This is what happened long ago. So, in legend, there are some elements of truth in it. But in myths are untrue story, but told to give answers to some questions. I hope you can differentiate the difference between myth and legend. I've read the story to you, why the sun and the moon went up the sky. And I've also read 2 stories on legend. I hope now you can differentiate the differences between legend and myth. Now I'll be giving you an homework. Go home, write down a story based on legend and also a story based on myth, and differentiate the difference. Give the difference between myths and legend. Thank you. See you next class.